So I recently joked on one form of social media or another, can I still be a failing artist without the alcoholism? As much as I thought the joke was funny, and I personally still think it is funny, it is humour constructed from real worries that I have, and to be honest, I think that everyone has them. The idea that your art, your craft, whatever it is all fraud, and you're not as talented as people tell you that you are. Well, no, that's the wrong way of phrasing it, but you're not as good as people say you are. Everything you do is, and always will be, just bad and wrong and all this sort of shit. I get this sort of feeling all the time when I look at like my work and something goes wrong, and everyone does. All quote unquote artists, as we all are. But no, seriously, we all are artists in our own way. We all look at our own work and then we decide that actually it's not as good as we thought. So this feeling isn't anything particularly new. It's just one that we can't seem to get rid of. And that's always something I've always found weird, the fact that we never seem to be able to shake this feeling of inadequacy. So, for example, just flipping through my sketchbook, I've just found a relatively recent piece that I did for an author. Well, I say for an author. It's basically this author had me read through her work, and I just made a piece I just drew like one of our characters doing something that we talked about her potentially doing in a future sequel. And it's just something I did, but I look at the piece and there is so much wrong with it. Like, I hate it so much on so many levels. Like, I like some of my colour blending for like the character itself. I didn't pick the right skin colour for them because it's basically I've got a pack of markers because I primarily work with alcohol-based markers. And I got a pack of brush markers that are all skin tones, and praline, I believe, is the one I used for this. It is the worst colour ever. It's okay when used to undertone or overtone certain other skin colours, like that's what I've used it for most recently, and it worked really well. But by itself, it's just a terrible skin colour. It's just very washed out. And granted, that's not necessarily my fault, but at the same time, I also feel kind of like it is. And then implementing like shadow and shading into the piece, I really haven't done that like at all. So I just look at it and it all looks very flat and amateurish, and it's just these things that really irritate me. And the thing is, I know that in the future I can improve these things, like mentioning like the shading and making everything look really flat and adding depth to stuff. That's all stuff I'm working on currently with Inktober. Because I mean, Inktober is the other place I really sort of see this sort of, when you look at a piece, it's great, and then you look back on it and you realise it's shit. But then you do the same thing with all your pieces, and it's like, oh my god, I'm never going to be good, and my work's always going to be shit. And the thing is, I look back on last year's Inktober sketchbook, and as ruined as this sketchbook is, like, I wish you could see how much I've damaged this little tiny sketchbook. It's listen to this. That is the sound of a sketchbook in pain. Well, I say sketchbook, it's a tiny little booklet thing that I got like at a National Trust property years ago that I repurposed for Inktober last year. But yeah, I've ruined the book entirely. But I looked through it, and for example, like you look at Swift, and Swift is a terrible one. Like, I always looked at Swift and I kind of liked it but kind of hated it. Like, I liked the idea and the execution of a couple of the bits, but overall it was kind of shit. And I look at it now and I could do it so much better. Like, my work with proportions and shading has gotten a lot better, but it's very, and again, it's an amateurish execution. We're not even going to talk about day 2. That just went wrong on so many levels. Day 3 and 4 I have no problems with. They're great. I think because with day 4 I really picked up like the idea of shading and everything, so that's all right. And day 3, it's just a nice piece. And again, I tried to execute a certain level of depth. And that's the thing, I look through this and like a lot of my pieces are just really terrible. Like, I mean, some of the good ones are like the simplistic ones. The ones where I sort of stayed within my comfort zone at that time. And then there's like a couple of them, like gigantic as a prompt was really good for me. A couple of bits that I've forgotten to shade, which is now quite annoying me, but that's beside the point. I've only just noticed that. Yeah, like gigantic as a piece was kind of out of my comfort zone a little, but I've still stayed within my comfort zone because I put a little bit of landscape in the back, but I never really properly touched it. Like the clouds have sort of got a little bit of shading, but I could have put way more depth into the clouds and the background itself, and I just didn't. But then, like, you look at my current stuff, and like something like Day 7, oh my god, the piece is so much better. I mean, I will admit that so far Day 7 is like my favourite piece, but that's beside the point. Now, don't get me wrong, I still have really terrible days, like Day 8, which was a star, I believe. I tried to draw a supernova, and it just looks like shit. But I mean, even like my shit days, they just end up looking a hell of a lot, not better, but less amateurish. Like, one of the days, basically, I just didn't really do a lot for it, and it's like this. The idea was this giant hand like, controlling someone like as a puppet, and it's something I'm going to go back and redraw like after Inktober's finished, because currently we're only on day 27. Yeah, we're only on day 27, so you know. So, you know, as we're only on day 27, like, I've still got time to sort of think about it and work out how I'd finish it, but that's the point. Like, I'm still improving, but I never really sort of noticed any change as I transferred over the entire year that's, you know, elapsed. And don't get me wrong, some of the stuff that I've done hasn't really changed, but like, even just looking through my main sketchbook, you compare some of my earlier stuff in the sketchbook to what I've done now, and it's worlds apart. Like, I'm slowly pulling myself away from the traditional anime style that I've sort of held on to for so long, and I'm sort of pulling myself more towards a slightly more realistic style. And I still don't have my own personal style. It's something that I haven't developed yet, but it's something that a lot of people don't develop for a long time, or at the very least don't realise as they develop it, a lot of people say. So I'm still waiting on that time, but you know. But just the plain improvement, and it means that as inadequate as you feel, you know, you're never quite as bad as you think. But I think I do have a secondary problem. It's the industry I'm in, like, or well, the industry I'm going into, like props. There's always going to be someone who's better at something than me. Like, I'll have my areas of comfort, but obviously the thing is you want to be able to do a bit of everything, but being able to do a bit of everything and specialising in one or two areas means that other people will always be better than you at certain things, and other people will always be better than you at pretty much everything. There's nothing you will ever be the best at. Even when you think you found yourself an ideal area, someone's going to be better than you at that area in a different way. Say, for example, puppet making. Like, you become the best puppet maker in the country or whatever, and then someone comes along and develops a new way of stitching on eyes or something stupid like that, and suddenly you're no longer the best because they were as good as you were, maybe slightly worse, but now they've developed this new way of doing this one thing, and it just improves everything just that little bit. So all the little flaws that previously you could iron out and they couldn't are no longer noticed because that's not the main draw of the piece anymore. And it just means that you will never be the best. And it is a hard fact for a lot of artists to acknowledge that and come to peace with it. Like, we all know that we're shit. That's the running joke as artists. We all believe we're shit to a certain degree. We'll always look at a piece and say, oh, that's really shit. And you can't convince us otherwise. Please, everyone, stop trying to. We can always look at a piece and work out where we could have improved it. It's why I think tattoo artists potentially have it the best. Because once you finish your piece, you get to look at it and have a quick look and say, that could have been done better. But as soon as your client walks out the door, well, there goes your piece. You can't look at it anymore and analyse how you would have done it better. And even if that same exact client walks back in, 3 months later to get a different piece done, well, the different piece is now your focus. You're not going to necessarily see the old piece. It's not something that's going to come up. So really, you just have to move on with your life, and that's why I think tattoo artists have it quite good when it comes to sort of the after effect of their work, like what Tom Scar calls post-upload depression. It's very similar to that, because you put something out in the world, or even if you don't put it out in the world, you finish it and you look at it and you find all the flaws in it. I swear to fucking God, if that's fireworks, I'm going to ingest the 2-part epoxy that I keep on my desk. And after you found all the flaws in it, then really it becomes very easy to self-critique and work out why you hate your style, why you hate the way that you work, and whatever else it is. When really, you should be looking at the progress you've made, because there is always something wrong with it. Until you reach that sort of peak of where certain, like you look at certain tattoo artists are currently. I just talk about tattoo artists because I've just like looked through a load of tattoo artwork because I want to get a tattoo at some point. But you look through a lot of their work and you listen to them talk about their work, and they're very positive about it. And I think that's a mindset that comes with time when you learn to appreciate what you've done. But that's a mindset that a lot of us don't have until you've been like doing art or whatever it is you do for a long enough period of time. But it does also help to come back to your halfway finished artwork in a sort of better mind frame. Like I was just showing one of my housemates some artwork we did yesterday. We went down to the beach and we sketched. I say sketched, it was like straight with pens, because that's something she's been trying to... She's a fine art student, which is really great for my self-confidence, because we've been doing Inktober together. I say together, basically we'll both do Inktober, and she'll send me a photo of what she's done or show me the book she's working out of, and I'll post mine on Instagram. And so living with a fine art student's great for my self-confidence as an artist, but she's also been really great for my self-confidence as an artist, because she's been pushing me to do stuff that I'm not so comfortable with normally. And she's also been sort of like, when it comes to art, like going straight in with pen and not doing construction lines with pencil and stuff like that. And like I've even got a big roll of brown paper in one corner of my desk, and I'm going to get a big permanent marker for the last day of October. For the last day of Inktober, I'm going to do a big piece that's all with this big permanent marker, and it's hopefully going to be great. I have no idea what exactly I'm going to do. I think it's slice or something, so I might do like a rift in time or something stupid like that. I don't know, I haven't decided yet, but it's been little things like that that have like allowed me to sort of push myself a bit further. And just looking at the piece, like it's a lot more sort of... I don't think impressionist. I'm gonna have to look it up. I don't think impressionistic's the right word, but I guess yeah, impressionism. It's closer to impressionism than anything else I can currently think of. So we're going to call what I did kind of impressionistic, because a lot of my pieces are very reliant on, well, obviously I'm doing like the lines of where everything is, but then it's very reliant on shadows and shading to sort of show exactly what something is. But I think the problem that a lot of people have is, they follow the whole mantra of, practice makes perfect and all that sort of wifty-wafty bullshit. But as much as it is wifty-wafty bullshit, it is wifty-wafty bullshit that works. Like, I mean, you consider the way I draw, like, figures and faces and stuff like that, compared to how I used to, they're so much more natural. Even, like, I'm looking at, basically I'm doing a character design, like, inspired by Black Rock Shooter. I'm doing a character design in another sketchbook I've got open, because it's going to be like potentially for a cosplay or something, so it's in my design sketchbook. And it is like the stiffest pose ever. It is like, feet like one shoulder width apart, arms hanging like by the sides, palms facing sort of backwards, so you can see the backs of the hands and the crook of the elbow and all this sort of stuff. It is like the most static and fucking stiff pose you'll ever fucking see, but it looks so much more natural than it used to. And like even like taking into like some of the posed characters I used to draw, it looks so much more natural than they did. I think a lot of my sort of practices come from just because I used to use like a lot of like teaching art books, like here's how exactly how you draw these lines for this and that was great for teaching me the basics, but I've basically had to teach myself everything else, and it's been a case of just look at what works and what doesn't. and I've got kind of off track. But I think that technique of what works and what doesn't means you're always improving yourself. Like, you don't get taught one way to do things. And this is a good thing, by the way. You don't get taught like one way to do things and then operate with the idea of, you work with that one way and then just make minor tweaks here and there to make it your style. And those minor tweaks are actually you improving the bits that you don't like, but you can put that down to it being a style difference instead of it being wrong, which is, when you look at your own work, it's like, that's wrong. Obviously, please feel free to tell me when I'm being a fucking stupid idiot and being wrong. Because obviously I never studied, well, I did art up until like year 9. So I was, 13 when I last did art? Or was it 14? No, we've been 14 when I last did art. 13 or 14 when I last did art, like as a subject. Whereas, like a lot of other people seem to have gone through like, fine art or whatever. Or they have an awful lot more experience than me, so please tell me if I'm being a fucking stupid idiot and being wrong, because I probably am. But this whole thing of like slowly and gradually finding everything you dislike about your art style and improving it, it's goes hand in hand with the fact that when you work closely with other people that also work as artists and whatnot, you also compare yourself to them. Everyone always says don't compare yourself to other people because, they have different strengths to you and you're better at different things than them. But everyone fucking does it. Like, I've talked to like people on my course and we've all said the same thing. We all compare ourselves to other people. Like, I was talking to my friend Matt the other day and sort of saying basically having this exact conversation of, everyone says don't compare yourself to other people, but you always do. And it's really weird because everyone seems to gel really well with that concept of, everyone always says not to, but I do anyway. And like I said, I live with someone who does fine art, so I compare myself like constantly. So it's, it's this thing that we all do. But I also do it with like other things that aren't just art. Like, you compare yourself to other people. Like, because I do, I don't currently do it technically because obviously I don't live like at home anymore, so I don't go to the club I used to. But I used to do taekwondo, martial arts. So it's something that, you do it in that as well. Like, you compare yourself to other people because you'll spar with people and you'll measure yourself up against, how well a sparring match goes. But what you don't realise is you're actually getting really good, but everyone else is getting really good at the same rate as you. So, I'm really going to feel the effects of it when I go back, because my extent of my martial arts practice currently for the last 6 weeks has been little tiny bits I've been doing in the kitchen. So it's kind of been very limited. And when I go back to it, at Christmas for like 2 weeks, I'm really going to feel the effects of, or not even 2 weeks, it's probably going to be one. If that, I might not actually go back at all. But, next time I go back, which will be February sometime if it's not Christmas, next time I go into a session, I'm going to be severely at a disadvantage. Obviously, I've been trying to work through my stuff currently, and I can work like with some people when I go home. Like, I can say, hey, can we go through these patterns? But it's sort of thing, you only realise how much better you are when people drop out and then come back, or you realise how much better other people are when, like, compared to you, like, because you sort of work at the same level, and then you drop out and come back and suddenly they're like amazing, and they really haven't done that much improving for like 3 weeks, but you dropped out and you haven't practiced for 3 solid weeks and you're back, and it changes things. Please forgive my housemate's footsteps. This is the bitch that does fine art. Katie, I love you, but you're an absolute bitch because footsteps and fine art. Oh, maybe that should be the alternative title. Footsteps and fine art. I don't like it. But this feeling of inadequacy all leads up to one big problem that I have, and it's my inner dread that I will never make it in this industry. I'm not good enough because I changed so last minute that I feel so very childish next to everyone else on my course, because everyone else is, I mean, like, you talk to people like one of my Canadian friends. She's worked in like a maker space for like 2 years and did all this, and everyone else seems to have worked for theatres at one point, and I did that 1 week at the Mayflower, and it's all sort of comes together, and you realise that actually I'm nowhere near as good as I thought I was. Because you go in and it's like, yeah, I kind of know what I'm doing, and you have people say, oh, that's really nice stuff, and that's just because they see you have no experience. as soon as you match yourself up against people who have experience, you're like, what the actual ever-loving fuck happened here? I mean, I got an unconditional offer from this uni, and I'm sat here like, why did you give me, of all people, an unconditional offer? I had a cobbled together portfolio with... Fucking kill me. I had a cobbled together portfolio with almost nothing in it, really, when you look at the grand scheme of things. Like, so much of my stuff was theoretical and design and everything, and then other stuff was just bits. There was nothing really major. I kind of showed off a vague appreciation for a skill set, and I know they sort of said to me, you know, we don't really judge you as such based on what you can do currently, because there is no GCSE in prop making. We base you on, you know, your passion for it, your inspiration, like how well we think you will do at the course, not how well you have done at this sort of stuff in the past. And that was a bit of a soother for my, you know, little stressed out mind. But I've now come here, I'm like, oh my fucking god, I am not ready for this. I mean, I can look at myself and say, you know, I've got a greater attention to detail stuff. Like when we're making big steel bamboo, like I was sort of looking at leaves and taking them back and redoing the entire process, because you made steel bamboo leaves, obviously. And, you know, I think obviously some people had gotten kind of bored because they didn't do any welding for some reason. Their own fucking choice, mostly. But they didn't do any of the welding, so they got really bored. So they got to do the leaves in the end, because that was the only thing they had left to do, despite the fact that we told them they could do welding. Fucking morons. But so the leaves got really sloppy towards the end. So, you know, my attention to detail made me take them back, and there's like little things like this that make me realize that actually, no, I should be here. I do know roughly what I'm doing. And, you know, all the woodwork stuff, like a lot of people haven't done any woodwork, and I'm going out there and I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. But then, like, you consider some of my friends, like my fine art friend, she's done some really fucking great work. Like, you look at her sort of, I say final piece for module 1. It wasn't really, we didn't have a final piece, but like her final piece for module 1, they were so good. Like, so good. I was like, bitch, you've never done woodwork before, you say, and like this is what you come up with, and it looks like a million times better than what I did. Granted, like mine, obviously completely different styles, and mine was supposed to look a little bit grotty, but I I think my problem has always been like finishes. Like I can't get like a smooth finish on my stuff. Like it always looks kind of childish because I don't spend the time sitting and sanding it and everything. So that's like one of the problems that I have. So that's something I'm definitely gonna have to address. But it's just stuff's really disheartening. And I wish I had some weirdly inspirational bullshit message to leave you on. But I really don't. It's just I don't have one. Like, you know, these things always seem to end on these like cheesy inspirational bullshit things. And I don't have one of them. Because either I'm right to doubt myself and I'll fail terribly, or I'm wrong, and then, you know, well, then I have the wonder of dealing with all the other problems, like, you know, finding the work and all this sort of stuff. And, you know, I might have the talent to succeed in this industry, but that brings with it a whole host of other problems. Like, if I just don't succeed in this industry, then I can go to an easier one to get into and, like, find work in. Like, so many things could go wrong. Please actually end my suffering.